here. Okay, so welcome to the Marketing Fundamentals for Customer Education webinar. Something before we get started too deep into the agenda, I do want to make this distinction. So when you think about the organization that you're in, there's really like kind of two types of marketing organizations, and there's an important distinction to be made. And the reason I'm going to make this distinction is because most of what I'm going to be talking about here is going to be about getting results from marketing. And not all organizations are like that. And it's important for you to understand which type of organization you're in. So there are two different types. One is a group of artists, and the other is a group of marketers. Now, artists are folks that tend to measure the production of content. So, Leonardo da Vinci got paid to paint the Sistine Chapel. The production of the Sistine Chapel was what was being measured. Is it done or not? And so you'll find that many marketing organizations that you interact with are kind of, they're like art shops, right? Where what gets measured is the production. And what we're going to be talking about is more the marketing department. And so there's a big difference here. If you're working in an organization that's kind of like an art department, then sometimes it might be surprising to you that there's not a measurement of impact. And when you're working with a marketing organization and marketing professionals, you find that they're measuring the impact. And so a lot of the things about like metrics that we talk about here, if you're working on a team that's more of like a production house, those might not exist. And so there might be a capacity challenge in terms of helping people understand what they need to do there. So art versus marketing is just keep this in mind that we're talking about it. You might be in one of these orgs. Okay, so here's the agenda for today. I'm going to talk about the components of a marketing plan. So the big theme from today is going to be talking about how to, what information you're going to need to develop a good marketing plan. And this is not, you could go online and look for Google like marketing plan templates and things like that, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff. This is like the version that I would say is the most critical aspects of these. So what are the components of a marketing plan that you can write down and that you can transmit over into a marketing organization that they're going to be able to execute on your plan. I also have a very relatively brief section that talks about navigating the marketing organization. So if you are trying to get some work done, where to enter that organization from. And then also we can go into talking about some examples. Now, if we have time permitting, I'll go into some of what I'd consider to be like your CRO types of activity. And so with that, if we have time, we can go into that, but we could also just look at more examples. Okay, any questions? Again, if you want to put something into chat about things that you specifically would like to hear about, let me know, you can do that. All right, let's go on to the first section here, which is going to be the components of a marketing plan. Okay. Key components of a marketing plan. I have three of them here. Okay, so these, think about, you want to get something done with marketing. You want to, like, I have a course or certification or something that I want to promote in some way. Marketing functionally is going to be there to help you with demand generation, right? They're going to help you drive people to whatever it is that you've built. These three components are going to help that marketing organization execute on your behalf, okay? The first is you need to define some kind of action or goal that they're going to pursue with you. The second is you need to define for them some kind of persona, and I put persona in air quotes here for a reason. I'll talk about that later. And then also you need to define the pain. And when I say pain, sometimes we use the word value, like you need to define the value. Value and pain, they go together. These are two sides of the same coin. And so let's talk about each one of these three in order: action, goal, persona, and pain. And if you can write these things down, right? If you write out a description of these, that can become a marketing plan that you can then communicate to the appropriate team. Okay, let's go through each one of these. Let's start with action and goal. Okay, so number one, the first place you should start, all right, is defining some kind of action and goal that you're going to have. This might seem, for many of us in customer education or any kind of like external learning, this is a known thing, right? We have this already. We think, oh, what behavior am I trying to change? It's very, very similar. So if it feels familiar, it should. So what I want to do is I want to create a target activity that is measurable, underlined measurable. I want to show the system where that data exists and the parameters of my goal. Okay, so let's break this down into each one of these sections. Create a target activity that's measurable. Okay, what's an example from our world of a target activity that's measurable? Somebody toss in the chat here of a target activity that's measurable, that where you're like, I want to give marketing support and I want them to help me do something. So what's an example if someone wants to throw in chat a targeted activity that's measurable? Anybody want to take a swing at this and have courage, throw it in chat? No? All right, I'm going to throw one in here. How about course registrations? Course registrations seem like a decent target activity that I want to market, right? Like I'm going to have some kind of campaign. Who agrees with that? Anybody want to give a yes or no? Debbie says yes. Okay, great. All right, well, we got one vote. Abby says yes with an exclamation point. So what is the system where that data exists? How am I going to know that this target activity, how am I going to measure that target activity? What is that system? And I know there's multiple, right? Because it depends on what platform you're using or what methodology you're using, but give me an example of like what system I would use to have that, where that data would exist. Okay, John, LMS, sure, okay, right, Stacy, LMS, right. So it's like, what we're gonna have is we're gonna have some system. So again, I'm gonna communicate to the marketing organization, right? I'm gonna say, look, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to increase, what did I say, course registrations. I have a learning management system, and in a learning management system, it has a field that says, registrations. And then specifically, I want registrations for this particular course. And then I want to define the parameters of that goal. So I might say, we get 100 of these a month. And what I want to do is I want to try to get that to like 500 a month. Right. So that's my objective. I define that goal. I've told you what the action is. I've told you the system where I'm getting the data from, and I've told you like what the components of that. Now, again, none of this stuff is really, this isn't magic at this point, right? But this is critical if you're going to go to the marketing organization, because they're going to say, what's the, okay, great. You want to do something. If I were to go like, hey, I want to improve, I want to drive, I want to grow my program. Growing my program isn't a measurable activity. It doesn't tell me where they're going to actually drive people to. And it also doesn't tell me like grow it by what. Okay. So it's important to be very specific. You could say like a SMART goal, like that's another way of looking at some of these things. Okay. The other component of this, and we'll go into this potentially later, is you want to consider the path that people take to this goal. Right. And this is extremely helpful to think of with when you get into marketing activities, which is your leading indicators. Right. Another term that you might use here is touch points. So let's say that like, what are some of the touch points? And I can help you out with this, but let's just keep it going in the chat here. What are some of the touch points that lead to our hypothetical course registration? So a course registration exists, on a page somewhere, right? Like it's a form probably that I have. So are there measurable, identifiable things that happen prior to me filling out that course that I would be able to see to tell me that like I'm moving in the right direction towards my goal? Anybody want to toss out an example of what those might be? Okay, Abby says page views. Stacy says email open rates. Debbie also says open rates. Exactly, right? So I can move upstream and define some of the activities that would tell me whether or not I'm progressing positively towards the goal that I have. This is very helpful to define in that system, right? So again, I'm going to go to marketing. I'm transacting with them. I want to tell them that I want to do some plan. I want to have a course registration be my objective. Of course, we have like a bigger objective than that. We'd say we want to grow the business or we want to drive adoption, right? But like we're going to marketing. We don't need to tell them the whole vision. We just need to tell them what the activity that we're trying to impact is. And I have that goal, which is represented by this, number sign over there, but there's other things in front of that that I should be able to see that are progressing towards that objective. If I can define those for that marketing team, that'll be helpful. Why? Because it helps them start thinking about like the path that gets in there, but also like things that they can measure that's helps them give feedback as to what kinds of success they're going to be able to get. And we'll talk about this more later. Okay, but you're on the right path. Touch points includes like, I'm going to send an email and that email is going to get opened and the email is going to get viewed. There's going to be a click within the email. The email is going to go to a landing page. The landing page is going to have page views. Those page views are going to may or may not convert into a course registration. Those are all touch points. Those are all things that can be measured. It's good to think through that because that's how the marketing team is going to think. Okay, let's use an example. How many people saw this thing? I think this was NFL like last year or the year before. It was like did anybody ever see this experience? Did anybody ever have this experience where they were like watching TV? I think this was during like an NFL. This was one of the most genius things I'd ever seen in my life. So they had this little QR code that just bounced around the screen. Okay. Yeah, Super Bowl. Okay, great. All right, Abby, I think I had that right. So it was like QR code bouncing around the screen, and that was it. That was the whole entire advertisement, right? So let's look at this as an example from like a touch point thing, right? Okay, so I have this QR code bouncing around the screen. If I click on it, it takes me to a page like this. Of course, it's crypto, right? Takes me to crypto, right? And what do? They take me to a landing page. And if you go to crypto.com, literally all of the landing pages have download our app, right? Download the app, either on one of these two app stores. So the measurement that they're trying to go after, which is very, obvious, is like app installs. Right, so that's the objective. You'd be like, look, I want to drive more app installs. Why? Because if I have an app install and I have your phone information, I can learn a lot about you because you're going to say like yes to all of the privacy stuff, and next thing you know, I'm like, listening to you make dinner. So they want to get app installs, but think about the touch points that are along the way to this. I can measure the scans of the QR code. I can measure the page views. I can measure how many views in my app store before I ever even get to the download of that app, right? So again, why are we doing this? Because it helps us to create some kind of sense of a drop-off rate. And this is really important for me as a marketer, and it's important for you when you're interacting with marketing to say like, look, how are we doing? The question of how we're doing, you could say, how many course registrations do we have? But really what I want to understand is I want to understand both how are we doing in terms of course registrations, but also the drop-off rate between each one of those, because I want to go back to the marketing organization at some point and be like, hey, is there anything that we can do to improve this? Okay, is this making sense? Is everybody sort of following along? When I say like something as simple as I want to define an action or a goal, there's more to it than just saying, I want to increase the size of my program, or I want to drive awareness to my program. It's really helpful to be specific, and it's helpful to think about the touch points that go along the path towards whatever objective you have. Everybody follow along? Okay, great. So writing up something like this is sufficient. Okay, so for this component of it, if you just to put in a Google Doc and you say, look, here's my goal. Okay, I want to increase registrations for my admin certificate by 35%. I measure this in my LMS using a field called registrations, and currently have 500 registrations per month for this course. The registration takes place on this URL, website.whatever. Okay, this is a sufficient amount of information to go to a marketing team with. So sometimes, another thing I'm trying to kind of inspire within you here is to think that like, sometimes we just go and make like, oh, I gotta make like a marketing plan. This amount of information is a good starting point because you can go to somebody and say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Okay, that's like, again, first thing, I need an action, I need a goal that's associated with this. I have all the information that I need right here to be able to understand. I'm like, oh, you want to send people to that website. Got it. And you want to increase it by 35%. It's 500. We'll measure it in this other thing. Cool. All right. Sounds good. Thumbs up, everybody. Everybody's kind of got the idea of like what an action and goal is. Don't overthink it. Now, I also want to make a note here before we depart this conversation is I really strongly recommend not in the early stages of this defining what type of content, right? So don't go and be like, I want an email campaign, or I want a social campaign, or I want to do like, try not to do that. Okay. And I'll get into this later on as to why not, but like, try not to get so prescriptive when you go to the marketing organization. Go to them with a challenge or an opportunity that you're trying to present, but don't get down in the weeds of pretending like you know what the best campaign activity is going to be. Okay. So this is my like cautionary tale. Don't go down the path of being too prescriptive. All right, any questions at this point before we depart action and goal? Is everybody following along? Everybody awake out there? How's it looking? Any questions? Things are good. Okay, great. Okay, so let's go to our next of our three. So if you recall, there were three main components, which is action, goal, persona, and pain. Let's talk about persona now. Okay, so persona in air quotes. Personas tend to be this, right? Where it's like salesperson Sally, like, oh, salesperson Sally is going to be my persona. I put a Mr. Yuck sticker on this one because this is like super Mr. Yuck. Like, don't do this. Don't do the like, this is a person who, you know, this is like sort of this hypothetical person. This is not the way to do personas. So what this represents is this represents sort of a caricature of a real human being. And that's not really helpful for a marketing organization. Marketing organizations probably have these kind of personas. So you might see these, but when you're thinking about doing this kind of activity, don't do this. Don't go build one of these. I'll just be honest, it's a waste of time. Okay, so you heard it from me. Debbie says, don't show them to your customers. Yeah, don't be like, oh, you're one of the salesperson Sally. Don't do that. But just don't make these. They're a waste of time. It literally is like this giant exercise that's in marketing, and I wish it would just die. So here's what I think is a better behavior that you should pursue. Okay, is define your target buyer. Now I'm going to use the word buyer or target buyer as just, this is the person you want to have complete the action, but just from a terminology standpoint, I'll say this is my target buyer, right? I want them to buy my course. I want them to buy the value, whatever. I want them to take an action. So define your target buyer using identifiable characteristics found in LinkedIn or Facebook. Okay, why LinkedIn or Facebook? Anybody have any thoughts on the why I say LinkedIn or Facebook here? And not like define characteristics. Anybody want to take a swing at why I'm using that specifically? Any guesses? I can tell you're feverishly typing. So Debbie says, who's actually using the medium? Okay. Anybody else want to take a swing? I can also just resolve this with you guys. Yeah, so Lindsay, because they're things you can actually use for marketing to target people. LinkedIn and Facebook represent some of the best like targeting that's out there in terms of defining characteristics associated with people. So if you go and sign up for like the free trial of LinkedIn Navigator, or you go and fire up a like, you know, pretend you're going to make an ad on Facebook and just go into the advertising section of that application and look at the qualities that they allow you to choose from. It's really helpful if you could put it in those kinds of terms. So let me give an example, and I call this like building an archetype. So these are the left sidebar Navigator, LinkedIn Navigator search filters, right? So they say what company, what industry, how big is the company, what's the function that they have, what's the title, what's your seniority level. If you can define, instead of it being like Salesforce and Sally, if you can give me a list that shows these qualities defined and be like, look, the person who tends to like use this type of certificate is in this industry, they tend to have these titles, they tend to do these sorts of things, they're usually like a mid-level, or they're an entry level, or they're a C-suite or whatever, and you can be very narrowly targeted with this. The reason that I suggest using this approach rather than like sort of a generic persona approach is because likely the marketing organization is sending out emails, targeting people on social, doing things that require these fields to be filled out, right? Or that like benefit from these fields to be filled out. So if you can tell me something like what's the title of the person or what's the industry that they're in, I can take 7 billion people on the planet and turn it into a list of like 100,000. And if you can tell me, you know, what kind of like head count they have, I can find companies that represent the 500, because I'd much rather have like 100% conversion on 500 than like a 1%. I don't want to do the math here, but either way, you know, it's like I'd rather like really target my message and get a lot of those people to do the action that I want to take. So instead of doing the personas and creating this like generic fluffy stuff, go into one of these systems and pick these approaches and make decisions and be like, this looks like who I'm trying to target. Now, you might not have a lot of data. That's okay. I would literally, if you got 5 people that have taken the action that you want to take, just, you know, look at those and use those as like your basis for this. So you don't need like some kind of statistical distribution model with like, you know, standard deviations or whatever. Like you can just look and use whatever you have. So you don't need to have like a big in count to be able to do some of these things. Debbie says you can search the same fields in your CRM. Exactly. Like any one of these systems, LinkedIn, Facebook, and things like that, those are used regularly by the marketing organization. And so if you put things into those terms, they probably will do it. I think there's definitely like a B2B versus B2C aspect to this as well. So if you're like a B2B, it's probably like LinkedIn. If it's B2C, it's probably more like Facebook. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And then where possible, give them some LinkedIn profiles, right? So like if you can find individual human beings, this is much more valuable. Seeing like if you can find 3 of me and I'm your target buyer, if you can find 3 of me and be like, here's one, here's one, here's one, that matters to me a lot more than salesperson Sally. Because if it's salesperson Sally, I'm like, I don't know if I'm talking to salesperson Sally. If you give me 3 LinkedIn profiles, I can find 20 more of those. And if I can find 20, I can probably find 100 more. You can say like, this guy right here is one of them, right? This person over here is another one of them. This person over here is another one of them. And if I can derive that, then I can look for qualities using LinkedIn Navigator or whatever system you're using. If you can give me real people, I can go find more real people, and I can actually be very certain about the realness of them, rather than being like, I don't know, like Abby, maybe Abby's salesperson Sally, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Okay. The other thing to ask too, when it comes to your persona development, is to go to somebody in your marketing organization, maybe prior to going down this path, and asking them, what account-based marketing software are we using? Usually it's one of these: ZoomInfo, Full Contact, Demandbase, something like that. There's usually some database that they're using with the sales organization or in marketing that they're gonna like create these, you know, call them personas or whatever. Then they create these groups with. And so if you can get access to one of these, then use that system. So that's the other consideration, is it's like if your company is using one of these, and this is how they're doing a lot of their email targeting or whatever, and they're enhancing data using one of these systems, then you could go to one of these and say like, I'll look in LinkedIn, and then I'll also go into ZoomInfo, for example, and like pick some qualities out and be like, these are the types of people I'm looking for. Okay, any questions about persona? So we talked about defining an action specifically, thinking about sort of the conversion path that takes place before that. All you need to do is define that objective and define the persona in very specific terms. Don't use like these kind of fluffy versions. Give me a couple of real examples, right? Because now I can say, I have this thing that I want to target, and I want these people to target it, or I want you to get more of these people in the door to do that. Any questions on this? Is this helpful? Are people finding this to be helpful? Because sometimes I think the challenge with marketing activity is folks will overshoot what they need to do. They'll create like these multi-page marketing plans, and it just doesn't need to be that. We'll get to a reason why here in a little bit. Okay. All right, let's move on to pain. Okay, this is maybe the most important. So I've told everybody, I've told the marketing team what I want to have accomplished. I've told them who I want to have accomplish it. Now I need to describe to them what the pain is that that person is feeling. So I'm going to let you in on. And so when I think of pain, I think of, if you have a pain, guess what? I got the pills that are going to help you not feel that pain anymore, right? So what we're doing is we're giving them an antidote to that pain. So I'm gonna show you something that this is like the simple secret tip of marketing, okay, is the before and after story. Almost every single marketing message that we are ever going to receive is this story. For as like, oh, like all these different, it's, you know, crypto and it's social and, you know, whatever, there's all these different approaches to it. At the end of the day, this is the story that's the basis of almost every single marketing story that's out there. There's a before and there's an after. Okay, that's it. If you can figure out the before and after, you can tell me a story of before and after, that is it. So before, okay, you want to write this. You could even literally make a slide like this if this is a sufficient version of what you're trying to communicate, right? But so before is a story about the person's, like that persona that we talked about, right? It is a story about what their life is like without your solution, okay? And there are two types of pains that are in the before, okay? The before times. The before times consists of some mix of emotional pains and rational pains. Emotional pains are things that are qualities associated with me as a person and my mental state, right? So I kind of, like I show here, create a list, so a bulleted list of all the reasons your target buyer feels inadequate or anxious about the work that they do where your solution can help. Yep, Nick, perfect. All right, well, I'll send you the recording after this. Thanks for hopping on for this period of time. So emotional pain is like me feeling inadequate or anxious, or similar types of emotional states, right? Maybe I'm like, oh, if I don't get this, you know, if I'm not successful with my program, I'm gonna get fired, and I'm worried about that. Rational pain is, these are measurable business or personal outcomes that are not being met because your solution isn't being applied, right? Maybe I haven't taken the LinkedIn learning course on SQL, and because I don't know SQL, I'm really inefficient with me, you know, trying to complete some kind of activity. And so therefore it's like, I could save so much time, right? Time, that's rational. It's like I could save time. That's a rational pain that I have, is that I feel like I'm inefficient. Now, because I'm inefficient, I also feel that like maybe people, oh, they think I'm an idiot. That's an emotional pain. Like me feeling like an idiot because I'm inefficient and the inefficiency are two separate types of pain. So hopefully that makes sense. That is the before story. You should be able to craft, if you understand who your persona is, you should be able to craft a story about the before experience of what it was like to not have your solution. Now, if you're already selling these things, you're already like providing them to the world and people have used it, you might just go to them and be like, tell me about what this did for you, or tell me about what it was like before. Tell me what it's like. People will say, they will tell you this story, the before and after story. So you can dig into it, but when they're describing it, break it into emotional and rational pains. Think about when they talk about things that are productivity related or saving time, saving money, rational. Think about them talking about like, yeah, I really was just worried that, you know, my head count was gonna get cut I thought they were gonna think I was an idiot. That's an emotional thing. Okay, before. And then write up a statement about after. So paint a picture for your marketing team about what the life of this person is like after it. Usually those are just addressing the emotional and rational pains on the left-hand side of the before stage. Before and after is the basis for almost every marketing program. And if you can do this, what you have described, right, you in this exercise, even though you might not think about it, what you've just described is you've just described pain points, so problem statements that can be put into advertisements and landing pages and email copy. And you've also provided a list of things that are like, these are value statements. If you do this, Like, don't you want to save 100% of your hours every single month on whatever? Don't you want to save 20%? Don't you want to feel better? Or shouldn't you, there's all kinds of stuff that comes from the value statements in the after world that are based upon the pains in the before world. Okay. This is the basis of every single marketing story. This is the basis of every single value story. And so when you try to start thinking about like, oh, I need to make a marketing campaign, you just need to tell them this. This is a sufficient thing. If you can have 10, 20 bullets on the left-hand side, 10, 20 bullets on the right-hand side, that's masterful. Okay. So let's look at an example here. So here's the all new last year, I guess, the 2021 F-150 Ford truck. Is this, I didn't even, I just literally looked and did like an image search, but like, so what do we think? Is this an emotional or rational pain that is being presented here? Anybody? I know this might be a little, you might be like, oh, what? So emotional, right? So what's the emotion? What's the emotion that I'm trying to elicit with showing a truck like this, or a Subaru like crashing through snow somewhere? Like, what's my emotional pain that I'm targeting? Abby or John? Yeah, John, inadequacy, right? Why? Because, or aspiration, right? John, aren't you the kind of, you're not the kind of person who sits behind a desk all day and, you go out and you just go out into the, like, wherever this guy is, and just you're the kind of person that's out there charging your own path, and you don't care, and somehow you don't got dirt on you either, and you're just like, you're cozy, you're comfortable, you're smiling, you're having a great time doing it, you got your giant truck. It's like, you're the kind of, you are the kind of person that deserves to go out and live your life, right? So it's like, there's aspiration, and the flip side of that aspiration is unfulfilled aspiration, right? So the emotional pains are nuanced, but they're more powerful. They are tremendously powerful, which is why when you have big ticket items like large, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 vehicles, you target people with emotional pain because it's like, God, it hurts so bad. It touches on something more so than being like, hey, if you buy the F-150, you will save 3% on fuel because of the new, combustor that we have in here. They're not targeting rational pain, they're targeting emotional pain. All right, so let's talk about the before and after example here. As I mentioned, I'll just kind of fly through this. But so as I mentioned, I won't get promoted without the ability to do a better job. I'm worried that people don't trust my decisions. These are real things I might be feeling. I want to improve the productivity of my sales team. That's a rational thing, right? Like, I have a number associated with that. And then you can make statements, like get creative over here on the after side. But it's like, look, with this solution, you will have the confidence in your decision-making when project X comes up. That could be a real thing that could happen if you partake in my certification, right? I will give you confidence. Confidence is what this person has. And it's a very powerful, powerful thing. I'll improve the velocity of sales, generate more, blah, blah, make a bunch of bullets. Okay, I think everybody's got the before and after, right? I think I'm kind of beating the dead horse on this one. Anybody have any questions about before or after? Take a minute here. While I do that, I'll just go back to our starting point for this part of the agenda, which is the 3 components. So action and goal just needs to be a statement, all I'm trying to do is tell you like what we're trying to accomplish. I want to give you some examples of the people that I want to have take that action, real people using real data, because if you can find me 2 or 3 of those, I can go find 100 more. And then also some statement of the before and after pains, emotional and rational pains that I might be feeling, and how this solution is going to resolve those, because that's the foundation of a value story. If you get those 3 things, that is a package that you can go and start having a conversation with the marketing team with, right? This is a sufficient amount of information, and it will start you out in a really good way. So the question then becomes, so any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat. So we're all good to keep going. Sounds like probably good to keep going. Okay, thumbs up on going, keeping going. No one has any questions. Nobody has any lingering lingering doubts or feelings. Nobody has any emotional pain associated with this. Okay, so I'm just told you that you can create this package, right? Tell me the action, goal, persona, and the pain, and then I can go transact with marketing. The question is, who, how? Okay, this is if you are starting out in one of these programs, or you're like, you have any background like product management or anything like that, you'll know this pain, or you'll know this bummer, which is like, okay, how though? Who, how? So let's talk about some important marketing team members that you'll want to interact with. And I'll describe what these are. I'll also describe a little bit about why the importance of thinking of it this way. So I've now created my package. I'm going to go transact with the marketing organization. Okay. So this is I just went and screenshotted like a hypothetical marketing organization here where we have like a CMO. You can kind of see this where it's like product marketing, demand generation, creative director, brand, blah, blah. And the reason I like this is because in a stood up marketing organization, so like you're in an organization that has, a couple hundred people, a couple thousand people, you would see all these different titles that are in there. And now if you're like me back in, Paleo Brian days, when I was just starting out with these programs, I'd go and be like, oh, I really want to send out an email. I'm going to go to the email person, right? What'd be cool is if I could get some social media. I'm going to go to the social media person, right? I go transact with those people, or I'd like to get an ad and go talk to this person. Don't do that. The people that you're going to want to focus on when I have this little package and I want to go talk with somebody, these are the people you want to go focus on. Okay. You'll hear them referred to as DG or demand gen. Demand gen, these are people who do the like digital marketing managers, campaign program managers. These are the people who actually like piece together the campaigns, right? So they have like sales activity they're connecting with, they got product launches they're connecting with, they got, conferences they're trying to promote, they got events and webinars, whatever. They're the ones that take all those requests, organize them into a schedule, okay? And they actually like put the campaigns together. So the demand gen people are the ones that have to make all the decisions about what order everything goes in. And then they're out there transacting with and building a campaign which uses all these people. Okay. So the person that you're going to want to take this thing to likely is going to be on the demand gen team, and you might go to whomever is leading up the demand gen team. This role doesn't always exist, but you could ask in the marketing organization, who does demand gen? If you don't get an answer to that, go, who is the one who manages the campaigns? Okay. Those would probably be like the best questions. Who does demand gen? If the answer is like, I don't know, then the next one will be like, who's the campaign manager? Those are the people you want to go to and talk to about this, right? So remember how I said earlier, like not to go in and be like, I would like to do an email social campaign on blah, blah, blah. Look, these teams, what they want to do is they want to understand those objectives, the messaging, the target persona. They want to have that little package that you gave them. They like to participate in the definition of the assets themselves. It's just a thing, right? So if you go to them with this overly prescriptive approach of like, I want it to be this and I want it to be that, they are the professionals that know what works. And so if you tell them that I want these people to do this action, they probably are like, okay, well, we actually are already targeting those people with an email. So maybe I'll just like put a link in that email that we already have. And guess what? Now I have the beginning of my flow of touch points. So don't go to them with an overly prescriptive plan. Ask them, say like, look, here's what I'm trying to accomplish, and ask them to participate in the development of what that campaign should look like. Now, they're like normal human beings, so they're probably going to be like, yeah, let's do like the least amount of work possible. So you might have to advocate for things to be a little bit bigger, but the way that you do that is what you define your goal in really good business type terms, because you'd be like, look, I'm just saying that like if I can grow this by 35%, that's another like $1 million or something like that, whatever. Work on your goal and objective and make sure that that thing is like really solid, because then they're gonna they actually allocate some resources to it. But go to demand gen, let them participate in the campaign. Don't go to them with like this fully thought out plan. It'll kind of look like you'll look like an idiot. So Everybody get that? You understand? So this is one of the big things that people get wrong, is that they go in and they're just overly prescriptive. Everybody, has anybody had that experience? Anybody ever had the, like, I've gone in and wrote this like giant plan, and now I'm gonna like go over to marketing, and they're gonna go like, okay, cool, like this is, looks like you got it all figured out. Anybody had that experience? Or you can share. Oh, Debbie was forced to write the huge plan. Look, if they want you to write the full plan, then write the full plan, but at least like go and ask them first, so that you don't go and transact on something that like they don't need. They might ask you to write the full plan, and if that's the case, then like we could talk, right? Like you can come back to me and be like, yo, what are they asking for? All right, something else to consider here is time. Okay, any projects, real projects, require a temporal aspect to them. If you want to be the friend of demand gen, don't go to them and be like, hey, I'm launching this thing next week, I need like an email campaign. You will burn that bridge immediately. Plan on approaching demand gen with a list of the different campaigns or marketing concepts that you have 2 to 3 months in advance. So that means that if you are thinking of doing something at the beginning of the year, new you, like new year, new you kind of thing, go to them right now. Set up a meeting with them, talk to them, do your best to try to put together a little package, at least get things on their radar. This is how long it takes to build campaigns. They got to go out and they got to talk to the social person, the email person, the content's got to get written, they got to get writers, they got to get contractors, right? So it's like they're building a whole castle of assets together. It takes a while. It takes a month just to put that stuff together. It takes another month just to usually like run the campaign itself. So like 2 to 3 months gives you a lot of flexibility, and they will love you and they'll love working with you because you think ahead like that. Because most of the organizations, at least in software, are sort of like, hey, we're launching this thing tomorrow. And so that's the world they live in. It helps them plan. And if you can help them plan, it's great. Okay. Last part of this section is kind of to illuminate what I was describing earlier, which is like, why not go to those other people, right? Because you might be like, I just need an email, I just need social. Come on, Brian, this is lame. Those people, the demand gen people, what they do is they direct work to the rest of the marketing organization. So if I go to them and I go, hey, I have a training thing, it's a live training, they might be like, oh, okay, well, that sounds like an event. So maybe we need to do some event marketing associated with that. And so let me engage the event marketing person. Or like, oh, I just want to like promote this webinar thing I'm gonna do. Okay, well, that sounds like it might need an email, maybe some social, and they'll transact and write the work into those people's world. And then those people will then, send off their work to things like UX designers and to brand designers and things like that. So it's like they write the work, it gets built by these other teams, those other teams then interact here. And if you try to go and insert yourself in the middle of this spaghetti, it really tends to piss people off. So that's why you go to one of the demand gen people and get their buy-in, because they are the starting point for the flow of a lot of this other activity. And if you just try to insert yourself, it's kind of like throwing something into the gears, right? And you might get it done. You might get the social media person to be like, cool, here's some, we got it. You know what's going to happen though when you write that? This person over here who's like trying to execute is going to be like, how come one cycle of my social media person was spent on this customer education team? What is that all about? How come I didn't know about that? Again, that's just friction that you don't want to involve yourself with. So just go to these people. Don't try to go and sneak around and spelunk around in this. And this is another common challenge that people have. Okay. Hopefully this is helpful. So last thing is, looks like just for the time that we have, probably don't have time for the conversion rate optimization discussion, but maybe we can talk about an example here. And I'll just kind of like list out, this might be a good screen to screenshot if you're the screenshot kind of person, is like, here's like building that package, right? Anybody want to use an example? Or if you have questions about the content that I presented thus far, anyone want to use an example, then we can walk through this together. And we can, an action we're trying to target, or anything that somebody's trying to target out there. We got a couple minutes, we could work through this. feel free to type into the chat window there. Or if you have questions about something else that came up during the conversation, you can also ask that. No questions? Okay, Abby, I don't have a marketing, but when I do, feel prepared to send them work. Great. Okay, awesome. That's awesome. How about anybody else? Does anybody else have something that they're, what's an example of something that they have recently gone to marketing or they're thinking of trying to do marketing? Or maybe something that like, is anybody thinking of, January 2023? Like, is there an activity that you're thinking of doing in January 2023 for like a new year kind of campaign? Or maybe alternatively, do we have anybody that's thinking of like, I want to target this kind of person? We could think about what some of those emotional, rational pains are. That's usually another good exercise. Debbie, I am, but I need to understand the journey first. Okay, great. Yeah, I think the journey is really important. Something I'll kind of skip ahead. Then if we can, I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second here, and I'll take me down to some different slides. So when we talk about, I'll kind of jump down to like a conversion rate optimization story here, just for the time remaining. So let's see. Give me a second. We'll do the quick CRO. All right. So as I mentioned about touch points earlier, I think that's really salient when it comes to this. So this is like this would be like next level. So once you have a conversation with your marketing team and they develop a campaign, this might be what this campaign looks like. They could put together something where they say, hey, we're going to run some banner ads, and we're going to have a landing page, we're going to try to do an email capture, and then we'll have an email nurture campaign. This is the kind of thing that demand gen team is going to put together. They're going to be like, okay, like I got all these pieces that I need to do. So let's look at one example of this. So this would be the kind of thing where you working with the demand gen team as the person who's made the request to the work, it is good to set expectations that you actually want to do optimization on the activity, not just one and done, and they just create it and they launch it and that's it. For a lot of your bigger activities, you'll want to do some kind of optimization. So let's use an example of our main conversion activity here, which is to create a contact with an email. So I want to take, a bunch of miscellaneous unwashed masses and turn them into somebody that we actually know and can communicate with, and that's this email capture. So when I do the email capture, I'm going to have, let's say they start out with an ad, or I send an email to somebody and I say, hey, you got a couple of, this is just a thing I pulled online, can you help me really quick? I got a subject line, I got like a bunch of stuff in here, and I got a link, right? I mean, we get these all day long. So when you think about it, what I have sort of like this, when I do conversion rate optimization, I want to measure the effectiveness of this particular activity. And so each one of these I call, like, there's an X and a Y, and it's X divided by Y. So I have some kind of objective, I have some kind of like input number. And so I divide this number by this number, and that gives me the conversion rate across this activity. So for the email campaign, I'd say I have form submissions and I have site visitors, right? So it's like, I've sent you an email, I have, had somebody land on the site, and I have the form submission take place. So here, let's say that I have 100 site visitors, I have 5 form submissions, I have a 5% conversion rate. So form submissions divided by site visitors gives me 5%, right? And so typically what you want to do when you're trying to move towards this objective is you want to measure the conversion rates across all these different touch points and identify where you're having the least, where you have blockages in your performance. So for example, here, if I'm using email capture, right, I have some page and I'm trying to land them on this page, and I'm trying to get them, or I'm sending them an email and I want them to like click on the link. If I only get 5% of that activity taking place, that means 95% is there. That means that all of the other potential activities are only at the maximum, they can only have 5%, right? They're using 5% out of this. Or if we say that like 100 people get the email, every other potential activity can only come from 5. So I'd look at this and be like, yo, this sucks. So I need to improve this. And this is where the optimization activity, I've transacted with the marketing organization. I got Demand Gen to create a campaign for me. They've set up the campaign. Then I go through and I want to look at all the different steps and identify the ones that have the worst conversion rates through them and basically work on those, right? So if I go back to my email, I'd say, look, I have a subject line. I have the offer, right, which includes a link, and that goes off to the form, right? And so then if I look at my email, I'd say, I have a subject line, I have an offer, I have a form that was 5% across that thing there, right? And the things that I've measured here would be like open rates and click-through rates, right? And what you do is you look at the activity that is right immediately prior to whatever you're measuring. So in this case, I'd say open rates, I'd look at the subject line. So every single action along this conversion path has a thing that you can optimize that'll improve it. In this case, it's like an open rate means the subject line is either compelling someone to open or not. And so if it's not compelling to somebody to open the email, then you would work on the subject line. And every single thing across this campaign, any campaign, has some minor action that you can change that adjusts the performance of each one of these metrics that you're measuring along the touch points. So that was the quick CRO. I'm always happy to go into CRO more importantly, but like that's the next level. So when you transact with your marketing organization, get the Demand Gen team working on your behalf, the next thing that you want to think about is you want to think about once they develop a campaign, they start talking about developing a campaign, you want to have a decent sense of all the different touch points that are there and all the things that you can control within that. Because if you're getting really low conversion rates very high up in the campaign, it means that the likelihood that you're going to be able to impact that goal that you set up, or that action or goal that you set up, is going to be very, very low. Okay, looks like we're almost out of time. Thanks everybody for attending. Hopefully this is helpful. And as always, hit me up online if you have any additional questions. All right, folks. Cheers. Have a great day.